Hello, and welcome to the first episode of the Duke It Out Wrestling Podcast, where I, Duke, talk about the shenanigans or events in the past, present, and future that happen in the world of professional wrestling. Now, for this first episode, I'm mainly going to focus on one topic because this past weekend, AEW had its first pay-per-view of 2022, which was Revolution. Now, this was a pay-per-view I was very excited to watch. The card was stacked with multiple matches that could have been Match of the Year candidates, and this show definitely did not let me down. Almost every single match of the show was good to great, and at least had one highlight every single time. And while this was a definite long show, this was a 5-hour pay-per-view if you include the buy-in, so it's a lot of wrestling to watch in one sitting, but at the very least, it was all entertaining, and I had a very good time watching it all. And so I'm just going to go through the entire card and explain what happens during the match and my opinions on it. And I'll start with the buy-in, and the first match on that was Layla Hirsch versus Chris Statlander. Now, they've been doing some decent build-up to this match for the past few weeks because Layla Hirsch turned heel on Red Velvet and Chris Statlander. She beat Red Velvet a couple of weeks ago, and it's been a part of the story that Layla Hirsch has been undefeated throughout 2022. And so it was her undefeated streak on the line for this match, and Chris Statlander is probably her biggest opponent out of the people she's faced so far. And this was a pretty good match. It definitely wasn't the best match of the night or anything, but they definitely had a few really good moments. Layla did some really good heel work, going after Chris Statlander's arm. Statlander did some really good comeback spots too, with her signature spots, like hitting the Big Bang Theory, and that clothesline into the backbreaker is always really fun to see. And, of course, the highlight of the match especially being Layla Hirsch doing a Hurricane Rana to Chris Statlander off the apron, which it was a really good spot, but it was definitely a dangerous one because I definitely couldn't tell who got most of the damage from that, because Layla did land pretty roughly on the ground because her neck could have hit the apron. She was very close. And Statlander did land on Hirsch's leg from the look of it when she landed as well. So that could have been pretty risky, but it seemed like they were both okay, and it was a pretty good spot. And in the end, Layla Hirsch, after kicking out of the Big Bang Theory, got a little more desperate and grabbed an extra part of the turnbuckle from underneath the ring, hit Chris Statlander with it behind the ref's back, and then hit a top rope moonsault to get the win. Layla Hirsch is still undefeated, but this was, I believe, the first match that she had where she really had to cheat to get a victory. So it's further validating her heel run, and it's very good build-up for her character. Chris Statlander can definitely afford a loss. She's still definitely one of the more talented women that AEW have in their roster so far. And I'm very excited for what they're going to keep doing with Layla Hirsch. I don't know if they're going to get her either a women's or TBS championship run anytime soon. I know she's got that match with Thunder Rosa on Dynamite next week, which I'll get into a little bit later. But yeah, this was a pretty decent match and a good way to kick off the buy-in. And after that, it wasn't a match. It was Tony Schiavone coming out for an announcement, and he said that he had a special guest, and then Battle Cry started playing. And I was even thinking for a second, I'm like, I really can't imagine Kenny Omega making his return since Full Gear at the Revolution buy-in, but I don't know. And of course, it wasn't actually Kenny Omega, it was Don Callis, and the crowd definitely booed hard for that. And he was getting mega heat, which is always great to see. He got shut the fuck up chants, and he was crediting the Elite, praising the hell out of Kenny Omega, basically always admitting that Kenny Omega is better than anybody else on the AEW roster, according to him, of course. And he didn't mention praise for Adam Cole, but also could have been hinting a little bit of resentment, because we know there is the potential for that Elite Undisputed Era feud for the future. But this was a pretty good heel promo. The crowd was very heated for it. We hadn't seen Don Callis in a while, so it was a good way to bring him back. And him yelling Kenny, by God, Omega at the end was really funny. And then after that, we got what was probably many people's most anticipated match of the buy-in, because Hook is so over right now. It was Hook versus QT Marshall, which was definitely praised by the commentators as the biggest match of his in-ring career so far. And this was a typical Hook match. It was around 5 minutes. QT Marshall did some really good heel counters to Hook's offense, which makes sense because QT Marshall was a trainer of Hook's, and QT Marshall's always just a dependable guy to just have a decent match, and he's most of the time never going to win. And of course, Hook got the win here with the red rum submission, and QT Marshall tapped out. The crowd went nuts for Hook, and it was a decent match. It was just a typical Hook beatdown, and the crowd obviously loved it, so it was entertaining enough, especially for just a pre-show. And the last match of the buy-in, definitely the best match of the buy-in, was the 6-man tag team match with the House of Black of Malachi Black, Brody King, and not Buddy Murphy, Buddy Matthews versus Pac, Penta Oscuro, and Eric Redbeard, making his in-ring debut for AEW, I believe. He hadn't made appearances before, but this was his first official match in AEW. And this was a very, very fun 6-man tag. In the beginning, we got some very fun chemistry moments with Buddy Matthews and Penta, with Penta trying to do like a suicide dive, and Buddy immediately just slid into the ring and stared him down. I thought that was really cool. And we got the really fun big beefy boy moments with Brody King and Eric Redbeard, which was really fun. And Brody King keeps showing that he can move for a big guy. That drop kick he did was very, very fun, and he's also a very good striker because those chops echoed so hard. And the match just kept building and building because every single person on those teams have a different element. They each had the big guy, and both Pac and Penta for their team, and then Malachi and Buddy could do all the really decent high-flying spots and then just really kick ass. Buddy's selling here as well was insane. The way he sold Penta's Destroyer, it made me feel like he broke his neck at many points. It was brutal. And another really cool highlight that happened here, I remembered Eric Redbeard doing that senton over the top rope that Brody Lee used to do, which was a nice little shout. And then near the end, we got to really intense moments, especially with Penta hitting the Fear Factor on the apron. I think it was to Buddy Matthews. And it was also really cool with... it wasn't on Buddy Matthews. It was on Malachi Black, because then Penta tried to pin him after that, but then they acknowledged that Malachi wasn't the legal man, and then Buddy immediately came in and grabbed Penta by the arms and just stomped him, which was really cool. And in the end, it seemed like Eric Redbeard could have gotten an upset win here, but then Malachi did the Black Mist, and then Brody King picked him up on his shoulders for a pile driver, and then that made House of Black get the win. This was a very fun 6-man tag, very fun spot fest. The crowd did this as awesome chants at one point. So this was a very fun match, and definitely a very good debut for Eric Redbeard in AEW. So for the buy-in, it was really fun. I don't really remember as much in-ring action happening and as much pre-shows for AEW as of late. So this was a really fresh one for me. And when we got into the main card, they had a very, very good choice for the opener, which was Eddie Kingston versus Chris Jericho. This was definitely one of my most anticipated matches for this card. The promos that they did together, especially that one a couple of weeks ago when it was just them in the ring with the security guards, they made it real, and it was very personal, and it was very, very intriguing. And it just made me extra hype for the match, which Eddie Kingston always nails. If you can just get him in the ring on the microphone for 5 minutes with the person he's facing in either a week or 2 weeks, it could be one of your most anticipated cards on the match, just like that. And that's exactly what happened. And this was a match that I think everyone was really wanting Eddie Kingston to win here, because it was even admitted by Chris Jericho during this feud that Eddie Kingston hasn't won any of the big matches that he's been in AEW. When he debuted to face Cody for the TNT title, he lost. When he fought Jon Moxley for the world title, he lost. His match with Punk at Full Gear, he lost. Even with the TNT title match at All Out with Miro, he lost. So that was a very, very good build-up for Eddie, and it was just adrenaline for him to make sure he gets this win over one of the greatest wrestlers of all time in Chris Jericho. And immediately Eddie Kingston went in for the kill, and in a dangerous moment when Eddie suplexed him immediately and Jericho landed right on his head. For a minute I was thinking, oh no, are they gonna have to cut the match off a little early because of this? And Jericho made sure to let everyone know that he was okay by flipping off the crowd in a typical Chris Jericho way, which was always great to see. And they were really going in on each other. They were really fighting, hitting some very bad chops, and then they were both aiming for each other's eye, because I know Eddie had that orbital injury, I believe. And then Jericho was getting more heelish, which is always more entertaining because heel Jericho is amazing. And Jericho was still showing that he can go. And especially with the recent weight loss that he had, he could definitely do a lot more of the agile moves. Like the top rope Hurricane Rana looked awesome. And when he did the lion salt, it looked great. And then near the end, it was getting really intense. Jericho also then hit a German to Eddie Kingston that looked really bad as kind of payback for that risky suplex earlier. And then after Jericho hit 2 code breakers, it seemed like he was about to get the win, but Jericho wanted to hit the Judas effect. Eddie Kingston counters, hits 2 back fists, and then puts him in a submission. I can't remember the name of it, but it looked really, really good. And Jericho taps out for Eddie Kingston to get the win. I thought that was an amazing way to end it off. I didn't think it would be by submission. I figured Eddie Kingston was going to win, but submission was a definite nice twist. And Eddie Kingston with the look of shock on his face after that win was just a beautiful touch to it. And what added even more great elements to the story, because Jericho said that if Eddie Kingston won, he would shake his hand and show him his respect, but Jericho refused to shake his hand, walked out of the ring, and just went to the back. And Eddie Kingston looked a little shocked, which it added so much more intensity to the story, because I definitely think there's got to be at least 1 or 2 more matches with Jericho and Kingston, probably on Dynamite or something like that. And it also kind of fits because Eddie Kingston refused to shake Punk's hand after the match at Full Gear. So it kind of just brought everything full circle, which I thought was really, really cool. But this was a fantastic opening match. Definitely one of the best matches of the night. And probably one of the better choices that they could have had to open the show. And the next match was definitely the Spotfest match of the night, because it's Young Bucks. It was the triple threat match for the AEW World Tag Team Championships. Jurassic Express defending against Red Dragon and the Young Bucks. This was a very, very fun match. Like, I know a lot of people could get sick of the typical Young Bucks Spotfest matches, but they're still always entertaining to me. It started out with Jungle Boy and Kyle O'Reilly, which was a really nice touch, because I cannot wait to see them have a singles match on Dynamite or something, because that would be an incredible thing to see. And they had really good chemistry when we started it off, and then when Luchasaurus got in, he was brutal as hell with chops and choke slams. Luchasaurus is definitely probably the best hot tag machine in AEW, if I could really think about it. And then I'm looking through my list of the real highlight spots right here. Oh yeah, Matt and the intensity with Red Dragon and Young Bucks was definitely one of the biggest highlights of the match, and something that we kind of knew was going to happen. A lot of people were kind of hoping that after Red Dragon won the Battle Royal that we could get a little something different, but it did bring a nice little piece of storytelling to it, and also had to be more of an advantage for Jurassic Express, because while Red Dragon and Young Bucks are having their heat, it always brought the advantage more to them whenever it could happen. And I'm going back to Luchasaurus, because I also forgot about this moment in the match. During his hot tag, the Young Bucks were trying to get an attack on him, and then Luchasaurus kipped up and then choke slammed them both. Luchasaurus just manages to get an incredible spot that is so unique and different than the last every single match, and he is showing that he could be a potential future AEW World Heavyweight Champion if they want to do it. It'd be amazing, and he is really kicking ass right now. And then near the end, it got to definitely one of the coolest spots of the match, where Kyle O'Reilly was putting, I believe, either one of the Young Bucks or Luchasaurus in a guillotine. And then Jungle Boy leaped off the top rope for a shooting star onto Kyle O'Reilly, was trying to pin, and then Matt Jackson with a 450 to break up the pin. That was an incredible looking sequence. And Jungle Boy keeps showing how he's one of the most resilient booked characters that they have in AEW, because he got hit in the face with one of the world AEW tag titles by, I believe, Kyle O'Reilly, and he kicked out of it. And then there was a high-low. Luchasaurus breaks it up, and then finally Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy win the match, hitting the Jurassic Express, which was one of the best looking Jurassic Expresses that they've had in a while. And while the ending did get a little bit sloppy with a cleared missed kick from Matt and Luchasaurus, but it was still a very fun tag match that definitely had its high intensity, where I really did think that Red Dragon especially were going to get the win on certain occasions. But I'm really glad that Jurassic Express retained their titles here, because they definitely could do some more with this, and especially with a certain match that happened later on the show, I believe a certain tag team might beat Jurassic Express somewhere down the line. But I'll get into that later. And before I get into the next match, they were showing off that up in one of the booths in the arena, there was Dan Lambert, Scorpio Sky, Ethan Page, and Paige Van Zant, because Paige Van Zant is believed to be signing an AEW contract on a segment on Dynamite, I believe. And Scorpio Sky is going to be having a TNT Championship match against Sammy Guevara. And they were paying much more attention to this match, particularly because it was the Face of the Revolution ladder match with Wardlow, Keith Lee, Ricky Starks, Powerhouse Hobbs, Orange Cassidy, and Christian Cage. Now, out of the multi-man ladder matches that AEW has had, this was probably one of my favorite ones that they've had. This was an incredible spot fest, and especially Orange Cassidy really bringing out the memorable spots here. In the beginning, when he was trying to climb on Keith Lee and Wardlow, not just the ladder spot, but their bodies, was really, really funny. And then when the ladder got leaned over, Christian tried to run up against it, which was really, really fun. But the best part with Orange Cassidy was after he was doing the helicopter ladder spot, Wardlow and Keith Lee were on one end of the ladder. Orange looked a little scared, and then he found a way to do a little back, to hang on and I'm trying to find a way to describe it, but he made his way to get on top of the ladder while they were holding on to it and trying to grab the Revolution ring, which was really, really funny and definitely one of the big highlight spots of the match. And Keith Lee, I am so happy to see him in AEW, and he of course brought out some great spots here. I really like the build-up that they used for a potential really fun blockbuster match with him and Powerhouse Hobbs. They were going after each other for a good majority of the match. And I'm also just looking through the best highlighted spots here. Christian did some really good spots here, but I really wish he got some more advantage spots, because it seemed like he was more there to either catch someone or take a move rather than it be a likely outcome that Christian would win, which I wish they could have done a little bit more, but with the people that are in this match, it definitely made a lot of sense. Ricky Starks as well gave a really, really good performance, and he was able to have a lot of really fun spots here that I wasn't fully expecting, and he nailed them. And when he speared Christian, I thought that was really, really fun, and he brought some really good heel tension, especially when he was getting close to winning. He was looking so slimy, and it was awesome. And then later on, after Keith Lee launched Orange Cassidy out of the ring onto a few of the people on the outside of the ring, that pretty much took Orange Cassidy out of the match. And then Wardlow and Keith Lee seemed like they were starting to team up a bit. They walked up to the stage, grabbed one of the ladders, split it in half, and then I think it was Wardlow that hit Keith Lee. It wasn't Wardlow and Keith Lee. It was Wardlow and Powerhouse Hobbs. Powerhouse Hobbs then hits Wardlow with the one side of the ladder, and then Keith Lee starts to get in on the action, and then it's Keith Lee and Powerhouse Hobbs then going at it, and Wardlow sneaks his way in and just knocks both Keith Lee and Powerhouse Hobbs off the stage through a table, taking those two out of the match. And Wardlow is so over, and with the build-up they've been doing for the face turn, which I will get into a little bit later, they've been nailing this booking. And when he ended up winning the match by hitting Ricky Starks with a powerbomb on the ladder, which was really risky. I haven't looked at any reports that if anything bad happened to Ricky Starks, but since his previous injury was on his neck, I was extra concerned, because it seemed like he landed right on his neck on that ladder. And also, I also have to mention, Ricky Starks mainly got distracted because of Danhausen. It's a Danhausen appearance, and I always got to bring it up, and he's from Detroit, so represent. But yep, Wardlow winning the match was what I was predicting was going to happen, and what I think was definitely the right choice, especially for what I'm going to be talking about a little bit further down the line. Wardlow getting a TNT title match is definitely what's needed right now. And next up, Tony Schiavone came out back to the ramp to announce the newest signee to AEW. He was ready to build it up and everything of how he used to call certain matches of his and work with him. But the people watching at home, we saw the paper, Tony, man. We saw it say Swerve, and so we knew it was Shane Strickland. So it's like, okay, that takes away the hype a little bit. But it is great to see Shane Swerve Strickland in AEW. He is an incredibly amazing performer. I didn't get to watch as much of his indie work as I really hoped I would. I did see quite a few of his matches, but then his work in NXT, the little that he got to do, was amazing. And Hit Row could have been one of the most potential amazing factions. And it really is one of the biggest fuck-ups that WWE has had over the past few years, and that says a lot because they've had many. But it's really great to see him in AEW. His charisma on the mic was great, and then him saying, "Whose house?" Swerve's house. Then "Love you too." That was all we needed, and that was perfect. And I'm really excited to see who his first opponent is going to be in AEW, because there is a list of people that he could face first, and all of them would be great choices. And next we had the TBS Championship match. Jade Cargill defending her title and her undefeated streak against Ty Conti. Now, this was definitely the shortest match on the card. It was around 7 minutes. But I did think that this was a pretty decent match, and while it has been acknowledged by many that Jade Cargill is still a little bit green in the ring, this was definitely one of her better performances. And especially with Kingfish Ingram playing guitar for her entrance, it just made her seem more like a star. And and the build up to her, it doesn't seem too forced, and she just looks like a star. So it definitely makes sense. The beginning of the match was a little bit weird because Jade kissed Ty Conti just immediately. Just a little bit of flashbacks to that Nikki Bella AJ Lee match. It made a little more sense later because Ty did like a kiss back as a joke, and even when Jade kissed her, Ty slapped her afterward, which was pretty funny. But then there was some pretty decent work as well throughout. I do have to give a credit to Aubrey Edwards. I wrote down the notes because when Ty Conti was attempting to get a pin, Ty Conti had her feet underneath the ropes. And sometimes that could just not be acknowledged or necessarily botched. But Aubrey calling that out just made it seem more real, and I really liked that. And Jade Cargill has really been advancing her moveset. The Eye of the Storm move looked really, really cool, and I was really, really impressed, especially by the frog splash that she did. It looked very, very good. It definitely wasn't like the greatest frog splash that we've ever seen, but especially with her never doing a frog splash on television before, at least I don't think I've seen her do a frog splash yet, but it looked very impressive. And Ty Conti also got some good advantages as well. Those kicks keep getting better, and the connections with the strikes always looked really, really good. And her being able to hit a pile driver near the end was a really nice touch. But in the end, Jade Cargill retained her title and had her undefeated streak intact, being 29-0 with the Jaded. It wasn't the greatest match on the card, but I don't think it was honestly the weakest either. It was a pretty decent match and one of Jade Cargill's best matches in her AEW career so far. And while this might have had a disadvantage for being a highlight match, because the next match was what could have been a majority of people's most anticipated match on the card, which was CM Punk versus MJF in the dog collar match. The second dog collar match in AEW history, the first being Cody Rhodes versus Brody Lee, and the second dog collar match for CM Punk's career, with his first one obviously being against Raven at Ring of Honor's Before Dishonor in 2003, I believe. And speaking of Ring of Honor, CM Punk came out he came out to his old ring gear, actually the same gear that he even had in his dog collar match with Raven, with the 3 X's on one side and Punk on the other, the triple X black jacket, and I can't remember the title of the song by AFI, but it was so great to see him come out to his old Ring of Honor mode. And it was also more impressive that a lot of people in the crowd knew the lyrics. I did not know any of the lyrics to the song, so I was just really glad to see that plenty of people did, because that was just great for the crowd and great for CM Punk as well. And it was more cool that we got the Ring of Honor theme, because MJF did another troll entrance with having it open up with Cult of Personality, but then it just cut to MJF's theme and the hardcore boos. It was great. And the match itself was definitely brutal. It started out really fun, and with Punk having the clear advantage of having his previous dog collar match, that he knew a little bit more of what to do. He wrapped the dog collar match around the post to just like launch MJF into the turnbuckle, which was a really funny spot. And then MJF was quickly able to get the advantage, yanking Punk off the second turnbuckle at one point, then just busting him in the face with the chain. And then a funny point when he was starting to grab the microphone, you could clearly hear him yell, "Give me the fucking mic," which was pretty funny. And I also thought it was a decent little callback when MJF was grabbing the mic and taunting Punk, because I remember in Punk's dog collar match with Raven that he also grabbed the mic and then was being a dickhead heel and taunting Raven. So it was just like a little bit of a flashback, and I thought that was a really nice touch to it. And then when MJF put the mic over to CM Punk to see if he just wanted to quit, he then just told him to eat shit, which was also pretty funny. And then Max then got a little cocky, got on the turnbuckle, was like, "You people just don't get it." And then Jacob Freeman just got yeeted off that turnbuckle, which is always great to see MJF just get yeeted, which it's just a fun sight to see. And then Punk was starting to get an extra advantage by starting to just stomp on MJF's fingers and really take advantage of him not being able to use his hand for not just his submission, but in case he's able to pull out the Dynamite Diamond ring, which maybe that ring will get brought up in a little bit. And by that, I mean it definitely will. But there were some really cool submission spots also in the middle of the match, with MJF getting a sleeper hold after Punk got busted open, which I will mention, by the way, he was extra busted open here. Blood was everywhere throughout the ring. I could definitely see it pulsing on many times, and I was definitely worried for his safety. Plenty of different occasions. It got so bad to where I was watching it with my dad, and he even said, like, "Is that real blood?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's just that much pouring out. It's just fucking crazy." But with the dog collar match, it's got to be extra brutal. And while Cody did bleed hard in the dog collar match with Brody, and Brody Lee bled as well, CM Punk probably bled more than both of them combined. It was nuts. And it made me more believe that CM Punk could have actually passed out when MJF had him in the sleeper hold, and then Punk countered with a good little roll up, and then watching CM Punk being able to do the Anaconda Vice, which I haven't really remembered seeing him do in many of his AEW matches, so I always get very hyped when he's able to do that move. And then MJF was always able to dodge it by especially like scratching his fingers on CM Punk's wound, which always just got so bad. And then what was extra funny, when CM Punk was finally able to get MJF to start bleeding when he knocked him out of the ring, the crowd was chanting, "You deserve it." And then Punk pushed him over to the corner on the outside and then just kept punching him, and the look on MJF's face, just looking like a desperate little kid, was very funny. MJF knows exactly what to do to add the heel quirks up. That's like both goofy, but it's also, you could still take it seriously in the wrestling realm, and it's always super entertaining to watch. And then Punk was starting to get a little bit of a disadvantage when he was trying to hit a knee to MJF on the steps, and then MJF moved out of the way, and that's when MJF was then able to get more of an advantage by going under the ring and pulling out thumbtacks after another highlight spot of the match with MJF attempting to hit the tombstone onto Punk on the apron, and then Punk reversed it and hit a tombstone as well, which there were quite a few tombstones throughout this pay-per-view. I will say there was one in this match, there was one in the women's world title match, and there was one in the world title match with Hangman Page and Adam Cole. I don't necessarily know how I felt about it, because it kind of just seemed like it was burying the finisher a little bit, but I also mainly get it because it is the safer pile driver. So if you're gonna do a pile driver move, might as well do the safest one. But CM Punk, especially hitting the tombstone, was my favorite tombstone of the night, because especially he has faced Undertaker at WrestleMania in the past, so it kind of brought that little bit of storyline back, and especially because he brought up pouring the ashes on the ashes of Paul Bearer on Undertaker during one of his promos with MJF. So it was a nice little touch. And then after the thumbtacks were poured into the ring, there were definitely some like fun little teases. We thought there was maybe going to be a Pepsi plunge onto the tacks, which would have been insane and would have been a potential stealer of the best sort of pedigree thumbtack spot of Royal Rumble 2000. But MJF was able to dodge it and then able to hit a superplex to CM Punk onto the tacks. And since Punk was wearing the shorts, at first it didn't look like he hit any of the tacks, and then it really looked like, okay, yeah, he definitely landed on the tacks. And then they even had the nice little touches of it as well when Punk got knocked back a little bit more, and then just extra tacks got him, and he just like yelled out in pain, which like that didn't even have to be selling. That was just probably just genuine. No, like, ugh. The thumbtack spots are always the most brutal, and every wrestler who's taken a thumbtack spot always talks about how it's one of the worst things that they've ever done. So I always just get cringed when I see a thumbtack spot, but it's always an entertaining spot. And then when MJF was really starting to get desperate, he yells out on the stage and is yelling, "Wardlow! Wardlow!" And then when Wardlow came out, the crowd popped huge for him, which was awesome because we knew exactly what was going to be built up to. MJF was asking Wardlow to give him the Dynamite Diamond ring. He couldn't find Wardlow was trying to look for it. He couldn't find it. And then CM Punk was able to hit him with a GTS, and then MJF landed on the thumbtacks, and then Punk looks over at Wardlow, and Wardlow then notices, oh, it's in the opposite pocket. He pulls out the Dynamite Diamond ring and sets it in the ring for CM Punk to use, validating a face turn for Wardlow. And the pop was insane. It was probably maybe the best face turn pop that AEW has ever had so far. And it was a great sight to see, and especially with all the storyline that's been built up with Wardlow, it all came full circle, and it was perfectly booked. And then CM Punk puts on the Dynamite Diamond ring and punches MJF with it and gets the pin. CM Punk winning the dog collar match. And also when Punk was going on the top rope celebrating a victory, he was signalizing that he's going to go after a title, which obviously it's got to be the AEW World Championship. But I was also a little more confused because it more so seemed like that this could have been the end of the CM Punk and MJF feud. And I feel like I'd like to see a little bit more, unless it ends up going into the world title picture, and then we just wait a few more months to have the feud really escalate, which could easily be the case, because especially with Wardlow turning on MJF, there's got to be that storyline there. And since Wardlow could be the next potential TNT champion, there's got to be even more potential storylines with that. So I am really interested to see what happens here, but overall, I do think the dog collar match was brutal, intense, and a very, very great match. I'm not fully sure if I do like their first or second match more than the other, but they were both equally as good. I think I might have preferred this match just because of the brutality and especially with the fun callbacks to Punk's Ring of Honor career, and this just felt like a very fun conclusion to their feud after it has been definitely the best booked feud that AEW has had, and potentially the best booked feud in wrestling over the past 10 to 20 years. It has been amazing. And this match was definitely a very good way to close it off for now. There's definitely going to be more into it. And another fun highlight of the match, of course, being the Wardlow face turn. That probably just added an extra element to this match, especially making it more memorable. Then after that brutal encounter, I always feel bad how like one of the more like highlighted matches of the night with a huge ass pop, it then gets followed by the women's title match, and they have to do the match where the crowd had already had the wind sucked out of them. But luckily, they were very, very hyped for this match still. In some spots, they did seem a bit dead in some occasions, but it didn't really matter here. In Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, versus Thunder Rosa for the AEW Women's Championship. And when Britt Baker came out, she showed off the newly designed AEW Women's World Championship, which I think was definitely needed. The original belt was definitely a much more smaller design, and the center plate of it, I think, was definitely a little bit too thin, and they definitely made it look more like a validated world title. And especially now that they have a secondary women's title as well, it was extra needed, and I think it was a very good look. And the match itself, I definitely don't think it was the best Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa encounter, especially with the crowd being a little more drained after the Punk and MJF match, and with the fact of the ending, because I really did think that this was going to be where they pulled the trigger and gave Thunder Rosa the championship, but Dr. Britt Baker won, and It's a decent decision because I also kind of get it, because especially with the buildup now that Thunder Rosa's going to be facing Layla Hirsch for another chance at the championship, and that St. Patrick's Day Slam is going to be in Thunder Rosa's hometown, and St. Patrick's Day Slam is where Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker had that amazing lights out match last year. So it kind of makes sense with it, but it did make this match just seem more like a filler point into a storyline rather than an actual match. There were some really good moments in it. Britt Baker has been getting really good with her strikes. The forearms and elbows she hit were really, really good. And the liftover slam that she did was really, really impressive. And Thunder Rosa, she did really good selling here, but I think the advantage points that she got were a little bit too little. I think she could have had some much more advantage in the match. The constant the like 3 drop kicks in a row that she got in one spot in one part was really, really good, and her trying to hit Britt Baker with the lockjaw was really, really fun. But I just wish there was a little more extra action from Thunder Rosa to Britt Baker, at least, because that suicide spear that she did to, I think it was Rebel, was insane, and I was very, very worried for her a little bit, and Biggie would be very, very proud. But yeah, in the end, Britt Baker did get the win, hitting a stomp for the second time after the first being on the title itself, and Rosa kicked out. It just seemed like it was filler, and the constant interference spots is getting a little bit dragged, especially since Britt Baker has been champion for so long now, and almost all of them have gotten to be the same kind of Rebel and Jamie Hayter interference spot, and it just seemed a little more off here. It wasn't a bad match by any means, because Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa obviously already have great chemistry, but I just definitely think this was one of the weaker matches to their feud, and it definitely kind of slowed things down a little bit, which I was very ashamed about, because this was one of my most anticipated matches on the entire card. And after that, we had another one of my most anticipated matches on the card, Jon Moxley versus Bryan Danielson. The build-up for this match has been absolutely incredible. Both Bryan Danielson and Jon Moxley have been killing it on the mic. Bryan just being a cocky heel while also bringing out some smart points on why they'd be a great unit together. And Jon Moxley saying, "I gotta bleed with you first," was one of my favorite lines from the feud. And Bryan always also bring it back, was like, "I'm not going to be the only one that bleeds." It was a really nice touch. And also, I will actually get into this a little bit later. When Jon Moxley and Bryan Danielson were starting to grapple on the outside, it got to the point where Moxley started bleeding, and it was the exact point where Bryan was predicting that he was going to make Jon Moxley bleed. But one of the few issues that I did have with that, they did show like shots of like the entire arena, like really far shots after they were just fighting outside the ring for a bit, and then it cut to Moxley bleeding. So it just made it more like so obvious that Moxley was bleeding for it. So it's just, it did kind of take the intensity a little bit out there for me, but since it's Bryan Danielson and Jon Moxley, they were legitimately kicking each other's ass throughout the whole match, and I just forgot about it immediately. Some of my favorite spots that I can remember was Bryan Danielson trying to chop the hell out of Jon Moxley in the corner, and he was just no-selling it. And then when Bryan got him back, he did one of the most stiff soul kicks I've seen from him, and he doesn't usually do that often, so him being able to always just sneak in an extra little move in there just shows why Bryan is one of the greatest of all time. And when they were going outside, they definitely brought out how they could definitely be equally brutal with each other. When they both punch each other at the same time, were knocking each other out, the back and forth submission counters, and definitely probably my favorite spot of the entire match. It just made me get so hyped when Daniel Bryan did the tope suicida to the outside, and Moxley just caught him, brought him over to the outside, and just started punching the hell out of him. It made me so hyped. And then then close to the end, Bryan was getting to the label lock, and then Moxley countered with the rear choke, and then Moxley also hit one of the most stiff lariats I've hit him see in a long time. And while Bryan was trying to get him locked in again with the label lock, Jon Moxley sneaked in a roll-up, 1, 2, 3, and even a little bit, Moxley's feet balanced on the ropes for a little bit, then he took it off to get the pin, and Bryan Danielson was clearly pissed off, and even after the bell rang, Bryan Danielson and Jon Moxley just kept punching the shit out of each other. They were not ready to stop fighting, and then that is when William fucking Regal comes out and goes into the ring to confront both Bryan Danielson and Jon Moxley. And he walks over to Jon Moxley, slaps Jon Moxley in the face. Bryan Danielson gives a little smile, but then he walks over to Bryan. Then William Regal walks over to Bryan Danielson. Bryan extends a hug, but then Regal slaps him in the face as well. And the intensity of the stare that Bryan gave back was awesome. And then William Regal just gave him the look like, hey, like, what do you like? Hey, you need to shake hands. You want to be a unit. You want to do this. You need to do this. And then Bryan Danielson and Jon Moxley shake hands. The crowd goes nuts, and we have a new tag team in AEW with William Regal at their corner. I cannot wait to see the work that William Regal and especially Bryan Danielson can do, because especially the close relationship that they especially had. I am so excited to see the promo work that they can do, and also just what type of potential ring work that they can do as well. I know William Regal doesn't wrestle anymore, but if maybe there was one more match in there with Bryan, it'd be awesome. Please. But Bryan Danielson and Jon Moxley was another potential candidate for match of the night, especially for just one of the out of the straight up singles matches. This was a awesome bout between the two of them. It was bloody, it was brutal, it had great back and forth counter wrestling, and Moxley getting the sneak roll up win was a really nice touch. And I think it's Bryan's second singles loss in AEW, so it made more sense that Bryan got extra pissed with the loss, because he's caring extra about his win and loss record. And now the second to last match on the card. It was the 6-man Tornado Trios match with Andrade Hardy Family Office against the team of Sammy Guevara, Darby Allin, and Sting. For the entrances, they had a little short film from Darby Allin, which was always fun. It was a funeral for Andrade, Matt Hardy, and Isaiah Cassidy. And then there was then he has a car just crash through these spray painted motorhomes. Darby comes out of the car that crashed into it. Everyone at the funeral is starting to get ready to beat up Darby, and Sting comes in with a flamethrower to scare everyone off, and then sets the graves of them on fire. It wasn't actual graves, it was just like one standing like coffin or something like that. It was really fun. And then for the entrance, Darby started immediately going in for the kill, especially attacking Andrade on side of the ring. And I think just even in the first 30 seconds of the match, Andrade just got like this huge mark on his back, and it was brutal. And Darby Allin continued to he delivered the definite best spots throughout the first half of the match, especially when he did the suicide dive to Jose Garcia while Jose Garcia was sitting on a chair and had a trash can over his head. It's a silly fun spot, but that's kind of what this match was in a nutshell, because it was just absolute insanity with everything that happened. Matt Hardy and Isaiah Cassidy were able to get a little bit of an advantage. They had some cool double team moves in there, with Matt Hardy doing the leg drop. And then Isaiah Cassidy was just holding on to the leg. And Private Party being able to just double team themselves when they had Sammy Guevara outside the ring. Sammy threw Isaiah over the barricade, but I keep forgetting his tag team partner's name, and I feel so bad. And his partner leaped him back up, and then Isaiah Cassidy hit him with a DDT on the floor, which was a very fun spot. And then Isaiah Cassidy was starting to try and do a high-flying spot off the stage, and then when Sammy Guevara was able to counterattack, he climbed up to the top of the stage with Isaiah and did a Spanish fly off the top of the stage through 2 tables, and the tables didn't break either. The table legs just broke, and they landed flat on there. It looked brutal, but it was definitely another highlight spot for Sammy Guevara. That dude is just a spot machine, and he just keeps trying to outdo himself, and hopefully he doesn't die. Please, Sammy, you've done more than enough. But then when we were already afraid of people dying, we then see a 60-year-old Sting jumping off the balcony and landing on Andrade through 3 to 4 tables. Sting is called the Icon for a reason. Like, he definitely did not need to do that at 60, but the fact that he can, and it looked so great, and he was definitely okay afterward. The dude is just such a certified legend and one of the greatest of all time. Just God bless Sting. What an awesome spot. And then in the end, Darby Allin, Sammy Guevara, and Darby Allin, Sammy Guevara, and Sting did end up getting the win, with Darby Allin hitting a coffin drop on Matt Hardy, which was missed, which was like a bit of a bummer just because it was such a fun spot fest throughout, and have it end on a bit of a missed coffin drop was a bit of a shame, but it was still a really fun match, and especially a fun way to get the crowd a bit re-energized for the main event, because with this 5-hour show, the crowd could have gotten easily dead on some occasions, but they really stuck out for it, and I was really happy about that. And now we get down to the main event. Hangman Page versus Adam Cole for the AEW World Championship. I was very excited for this match. I know they've definitely faced each other in the past, but I couldn't really remember exact sequences from any of their past singles matches. So I was really excited to see how this match was exactly going to go. Adam Cole first came out and he had the Master Chief entrance gear, which looked awesome with the 117 on it and everything. It was awesome. And then when Adam Page came out and they were staring down, the crowd did one of my favorite troll chants that I can possibly remember over the past few years, with either "Let's go Adam, Adam sucks," "This is Adam," clap, clap, clap. It was very fun, and even the commentators acknowledging it in the beginning, Cole and Page both getting a smirk about it. It was just a fun little touch, and it definitely got the crowd re-energized, because with this 5-hour pay-per-view, the main event needed to have some more energy into it. But what really extra surprised me with this main event was how, I think maybe in-ring wise, this was probably my favorite match of the entire show. The intensity kept balancing so well throughout, back and forth. Hangman Page and Adam Cole had fantastic chemistry. And it had the perfect balance of Hangman's more aggressive and brutal matches with more stiff strikes and just really quick counterattacks, and then just combining with Cole's Spot Fest Mania main event bouts. And while it wasn't like as much of a spot fest as you'd say like Gargano and Adam Cole, but I kind of liked that it wasn't more of like that. It kind of added more of like a really competitive back and forth match, because they really did a lot of really impressive things throughout. Hangman's clotheslines just keep getting more and more stiff throughout the match, which was always great to see. Adam Cole was doing some really cool counters, especially that when he slid out of the fireman's carry from Hangman Page into the backstabber that just really hit Hangman on his neck, which looked awful, but it was an awesome looking spot. And then I also have to give Adam Cole props to this, because I made sure to write this down, because there could have been a potential spot where Adam Cole slipped down the rope, but he was able to counter, and then he was able to counter it, and then when Hangman Page tried to then dodge and do a moonsault, he then countered it into the super kick, which always is an amazing looking spot, and Adam Cole is one of the super kick masters for a reason. And speaking of super kick masters, later on, Adam Cole then starts mocking HBK by going to the corner and stomping his foot on the ground, and then when they get to the outside of the ring, Hangman Page does one of the best outside moonsaults that I've seen in a long time from him. And then that's when Red Dragon started to come out and interfere. Actually, not after it wasn't the Orihara moonsault. It was after he did the moonsault off the top rope, where he just carries Adam Cole. I can't remember the exact name of that moonsault, but it is one of the most impressive moves that he has in his arsenal. But then, of course, when Red Dragon came out, there was, of course, the advantage for Adam Cole. They got the distraction. He slid Adam Page outside and then hit the Panama Sunrise onto the floor, which then led to Dark Order coming out and bringing more of an even trade in. And I loved when Dark Order was starting to like cause chaos, and I couldn't tell if it was Kyle O'Reilly or John Silver who said "ah shit" when they were like in the middle of the chase, but I just got a really big giggle out of that. And they also assisted Hangman Page in letting him get a Deadeye to Adam Cole through a table, which was a very good looking spot. And the Deadeye is always one of the more dangerous looking spots from Page, and the table one honestly made it look like one of the most safe, but it looked really, really good too. And then unfortunately, Red Dragon, after they were taken out by Dark Order and then sent to the back, Adam Cole was still able to get a distraction. He hit a low blow and then hit the boom, but Adam Page kicks out. And then Adam Page then goes for a buckshot lariat. There's a counter into a super kick, and And then Adam Cole tries to go for the boom again. And then one of my favorite parts of the match was when of Hangman Page just dodging the boom by just dropping to his stomach. And then just Cole's just like, well, what do I do? The crowd went nuts for that spot. And I was really glad that they did. Because when I saw it, I'm just like, fuck yes, this is wrestling. This is a wrestling main event. And I was just so glad to see that. And while I knew this was definitely going to be a great main event, this kept further escalating into a fantastic bout between the two of them that just really was escalating into one of my favorite matches of the entire year, which I was really not expecting. It was getting to the levels of Hangman's matches with Omega and Bryan Danielson. And while this match obviously had the potential to be that, I figured there might have been some interference spots that could have caused that. But the back and forth in-ring work was one of the best that we have seen all year for sure. And then near the end, we got the buckshot lariat, but Adam Cole slides his hand onto the ropes. And after that, Adam Cole gets a little bit of payback after Red Dragon and Adam Cole taped up Hangman to the ropes and then attacked him. Hangman grabbed his belt, wrapped Adam Cole's wrists around it, and then hit him with a few super kicks. Adam Cole got loose, but Hangman then hits Adam Cole with the boom, and then hits one of the stiffest buckshots I've seen, and Adam Cole just sold it so great. It looked like he just got hit with a knockout punch, and that led to Adam Page getting the win, retaining his AEW World Championship. I'm sorry, that was a little bit of a stumbled discussion for that, but this was a fantastic main event. Hangman Page really keeps elevating his in-ring work and shows how he deserves to be the world champion and face of the company right now. His performances keep getting better. He shows how the brutality mixed in with the aggression and just flat out storytelling that he can bring every single time will always lead to him being one of the biggest crowd reactors in AEW right now. And Adam Cole was such a terrific heel. His in-ring work was definitely the best that it's looked in his AEW career so far, and definitely the best match that he's had in AEW so far. So overall, that was my review of Revolution. As a pay-per-view as a whole, I thought it was an amazing show. I definitely think it was way too long. 5 hours can definitely get a little bit tiresome, but all of the matches were great. I would say probably the weakest match, I would at least say for storytelling purposes, and more so disappointed that Thunder Rosa didn't get the win. I do think that Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa was probably the weakest match of the show, which I was really not expecting going into it. And for the best match of the night, I would probably go back and forth with the dog collar match, Paige and Adam Cole, and Bryan Danielson and Jon Moxley was also a really, really good match. All those matches are worth checking out, and also the triple threat tag team match is another amazing spot fest. But as for an overall rating out of 10, I would probably give Revolution, it a solid 8 to maybe an 8.5. The main event especially capitalizing it being one of AEW's most memorable shows in a while. Not really in a while, because every single pay-per-view they've been delivering has been great lately, but especially compared to last year's Revolution, this one was way better and didn't have an ending of botched explosion. So you really can't get better than that, can you? But that was my review of Revolution and the first episode of the Duke It Out Wrestling Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to comment below your thoughts on Revolution and the matches in general. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll make sure to release some more stuff later. And thank you so much for listening once again.